behind the smoke and mirrors of this national government.
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Chris.
These are serious issues and they deserve better than the drivel we've just listened to from Andrew Williams. These are important issues, and as Alan Martin would say, it's the putting right that counts. And the great thing about what's happened here is that a secretive spy agency has been exposed to sunlight, has been exposed to a cold, hard review, and that's what I want to focus on this afternoon. I certainly don't want to focus on the unprofessional comments of Sir Bruce Ferguson, who was seen deep in conversation with Geoffrey Palmer and Lambton Key this afternoon. I don't intend this afternoon to comment on the role of H3 as he then was when he served Helen Clark and Heather Simpson on Level 9. What did Mr Robertson know and when did he know it? He is the one who had quite a number of interactions with the GCSB when he was H3, and it's going to be very interesting to explore that issue in the months to come. What I want to focus on and focus on principles and not personalities are two issues, Mr Speaker. The first is the 2003 legislation, and Mr Gough was one of those nodding automatons in the Cabinet Committee that approved the bill for introduction. And the fact of the matter is that this legislation was drafted when Helen Clark was Prime Minister. It went through Parliament very quickly. It was a classic case of legislative negligence, quite frankly. It was drafted by the GCSB. It was not tested independently. GCSB assumptions and advice were relied on, and it was a totally unsatisfactory way of making law, for which I say to Mr Robertson, all parties in this House bear some responsibility, or I do observe that the Labour Party at that time were riding triumphant. They had 52 seats, although over the detested foreshore and seabed legislation they were shortly to lose a few members, and we had 27. But we stand up and say, well, insofar as we voted for it, there are questions that looking forward we do need to address, because the legislation is poorly drafted. Section 14, which the Green leader relied on, is clear enough on its terms, but then you go to the definition of what is a foreign person or a foreign organisation, and there are difficult questions, and they are matters which were identified. Well, I suggest, and I'm quite happy to talk offline to Mr Robertson about the definition of foreign organisation, because it's not clear. And go to the passage and look at it, and the member will find that his superficial third-rate analysis is inadequate. And the other thing that needs to be addressed, so the legislation needs to be redrafted, but we also need to look at issues of compliance, issues that go back for years. And frankly, when I read the Kitteridge report, I was not at all happy, because the Act is one thing, but there was no reference in the legal section of GCSB to any other legislation. There was no reference to clear international law texts. There was no reference to jurisprudence. For example, the Supreme Court judgment recently on the issue of spying in the Uraweras, the Hamed case, not referred to. And importantly, and I say this in answer to some of the questions that were being raised by the Green Party leader this afternoon about Crown Law Office involvement, because he's right. The Crown Law Office is there to provide authoritative legal advice for the Crown, and it's very important for every public sector organisation to keep close to that organisation. But as the report says at page 25, they didn't. 12 opinions were provided by Crown Law to GCSB between 1988 and September 2012, 24 years, and only 3 dealt with operational matters, but in the last 6 months 10 opinions have been provided. So quite frankly, there is a lot to be learned from this exercise, but the legal compliance, the fundamental Primer 1 compliance that Sir Bruce Ferguson and others should have been looking at over the years did not happen, and it's totally unsatisfactory. And so for all the cries and the screams and, as I said, the adolescent piffle that we heard from Andrew Williams, let's get down to what the issues are and what the issues are not. It's important to get this right going forward. It's very good that this secretive organisation has been exposed to sunlight, and as I said, it is the putting right that counts.
Mr. Speaker. Mr.
Order.
Speaker.
I call the Honourable Annette King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Talking of negligence, Mr. Speaker, one wonders what role the Attorney-General did not play in advice to the Prime Minister. He's full of sound and fury now, but obviously was pretty silent